down the rabbit hole we go. Now, guys, with any kind of incident like Charlie Kirk's or Trump's, when they took a shot at him a few years ago, or a year ago, excuse me, there's always inconsistencies and there's always issues with what happened. And there are things that connect to those assassinations that don't make sense, right? So the deeper you dive, you start picking up a lot more discrepancies or inconsistencies to what happened. Now, Charlie Kirk is the other day, and there are a lot of inconsistencies and there are a lot of discrepancies with what happened on that day, especially a month before and the day before, and then leading up to the days after. And things are just not making sense. Now, the craziness about all of this is, I find it, interesting that people who are not conspiracy theorists are like, yo, this didn't make sense. What about this? What about that? And I'm like, yes, more people in the conspiracy world, because a lot of the times the conspiracies are right or close to right. That being said, there's a lot of discrepancies with Charlie Kirk's assassination. Now, we're going to start with the fact that the shooter supposedly takes out Charlie Kirk on a rooftop, jumps off the roof, disassembles a rifle, puts it in a bag, gets dressed in a different clothes, gets caught on camera going up or down the stairs. I think he was going up the stairs. And then reassembles a rifle and dumps it in the woods. Leaves shell casings on the rooftop, I think. One that was spent and then 2 or 3 that weren't spent. Who does that? And then disappears for hours. I guess he gets home and then tells his father what he did, which sounded like a script. And then his father holds him until the cops get there after they talk to their pastor. Again, sounds almost believable, except for the guy that they had on the security camera going up the stairs and the guy that had his mugshot taken, 2 different dudes, 2 different face structures. Now, yes, face structures can change slightly over time due to lack of water, too much water, not enough sleep, enough sleep. There is that, and the gameplay, your face can change slightly through way of cortisol, right? A hormone in the body that's created through stress. So I also allow for wiggle room with that. But this guy and the guy that was in the surveillance camera and the guy that had the mugshot taken, 2 different dudes. Now, I'm wondering if Charlie Kirk was being warned and he just didn't see it or wasn't listening to it or didn't take it seriously. But he did have credible threat on his life for that day. And the way somebody put it, they made it sound like the threat was more credible and it was almost imminent. But he just didn't take heed to it. But there were 2 things that happened prior to that day that was red flaggy. One was the infamous book that is now scrubbed off of Amazon. But this book here, The Shooting of Charlie Kirk, was published September 9th. Charlie Kirk was shot September 10th. It takes 48 to 72 hours to publish a book on Amazon. 48 hours to 72 hours prior to the book being released, it was written. And the author of the book was Anastasia something or another, right? So we don't know if that was a ghostwriter or if this thing was completely made up by AI. But that was red flag number 1, or rather warning number 2. Warning number 1 was a song on SoundCloud was Charlie Kirk Dead at 31. That was a month or 2 before he passed away. Actually, it might have been 2 months because I think the song came out in July. So still, why is there a song being released saying he's dead at 31? You have a book that was released a day before he was shot. And then you had this transgender person named Omar who says, oh, Charlie Kirk is speaking at my school. And then a reply at the bottom stating, oh, something big's going to happen tomorrow. So again, a lot of warnings, but none of them were heeded. And I don't know if they were warnings or the people who released this stuff made a mistake. I doubt that very much, because 3 of those are it's not a coincidence at all. So maybe he was being warned, he just didn't listen to it. Now, there's a growing possibility that there's a connection between Charlie Kirk and Israel. And Candace Owen had talked about some letter that Benjamin Netanyahu wrote Charlie Kirk, And in the letter, there was something about money to be exchanged to, I guess, come on his side or join Netanyahu's side or something like that. I don't know what the letter clearly stated, but there was something about money and coming into the fold, and Charlie Kirk turned it down. Now, Charlie Kirk was changing his tune with Israel as to what's going on in Palestine, but he also, to be fair, discredited Palestine in their nonsense, but he also wasn't siding with Israel 100%. Even Candace Owens started changing her tune with Israel because I think they found out some information that maybe Benjamin Netanyahu didn't want them to know or want them to release, and this is why he's dead. There's also a connection with a plane that left out of Provo Airport, which is in Utah, and that plane went dark for an hour after leaving the airport and then landed back. Now, the airline or the owner of the plane said that that had nothing to do with the shooting, but we're going to believe that guy because the owner of the plane is, guess what? A Yakima, right? Jew. So, again, there's a nice, interesting connection there, but I need a little more evidence or a little more suspicion before I go full on. Now, listen, I am not doubting that the Mossad was probably responsible for this, because just the way everything is lining up, it's not making sense. And then the whole, evidence just being out there in the open, I'm not buying any of that shit. And of course, they're going to start blaming pro-transgender people, and that this guy had a transgender party. The shooter supposedly has a transgender partner, so they're making that connection. And again, just a couple of days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, Trump started going after, or rather wanted to pass a bill stating whether or not transgender people should own firearms. And then this happened. I am not buying it, guys. It's a giant vat of shit, and everything's starting to mix together, and it all goes back to either Trump being involved or the Mossad, i.e. Israel, being involved. There's something here, and it's not looking good. And the only reason why I'm looking at Trump a little differently now, first of all, I don't believe a fucking word he said about, Charlie's my buddy, this, that, and the third. The guy was at a Yankee game fucking carrying on and dancing a day after Charlie Kirk was killed. If Charlie Kirk's your friend, the last thing you're doing is going to a fucking Yankee game. The one thing you're going to start doing is you're going to listen to this investigation. You're going to be all in. You're visiting family and friends. You're not going to a fucking Yankee game in New York. So I'm not buying that shit at all. Now, if they weren't best of friends, I understand that. But according to Trump and according to Charlie Kirk's wife and Charlie Kirk before he was murdered, that they were best friends. Or they were good friends, excuse me. I'm not buying this. Something reeks here. Now, there is a professional distractor, at least I'm labeling him that, named George Vin. And this guy is a professional distractor. So interestingly enough, he was the first caller on 9/11 to call about a plane going into the building. Then there was a bomb threat somewhere in Utah. I don't know if it was in regards to the same university Charlie was at or it happened a while ago, but he makes a bomb threat and he gets caught and he goes, "Oh, I was joking." And then he's supposedly at this rally and gets caught at this rally, giving the shooter enough time to get away. Professional distractor. This guy being involved in 3 major incidents, I think there was a 4th one, but I can't remember. Being involved in these 3 major incidents, it's there all of a sudden. I'm not buying this shit. On top of all of that, while we're all talking about Charlie Kirk and how much we miss him and all this other stuff, and people are crying and carrying on, of course, the Epstein file gets blocked by the Republicans. While we're all being distracted, that shit's going on, and apparently the heat between China and the United States is starting to get turned up. But we're all being distracted. Anyway, guys, this is The Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching the Angry Truth channel.